My name's Jim Strivey, and we would like to welcome you to Open Circle. Today, the Open Mission Statement is being read by Gilles Bernier.
Thank you. Open Circle Mission Statement. We provide a place to gather for promoting harmony in mind, body, and spirit. We do not necessarily agree with, endorse, or promote the ideas and philosophies presented by our guest speakers. We encourage each of you to form your own opinion guided by your innate higher self. We are dedicated to creating a safe, supportive place to heal, to grow, and to realize our true essence.
Thank you very much. If you would like to receive the program schedule, please give me your name and email address after the session today. We would like to welcome people here that are here for the first time, so please raise your hand. Wow, wonderful. And we'll bring the mic to you. Please stand and hold the mic so that you not too close, but so you can hear it from the speakers well. Tell us your name and where you're from.
Ed Mayer, I'm from Asheville, North Carolina, here visiting our friends Michael and Maureen.
Yay, Asheville.
Hi, I'm Susan. I'm also visiting our friends from Asheville, North Carolina.
Thank you. Jill, there are several people in this area. So if you'd hold your hand up again. There's one. Wonderful to see all the new faces.
I'm also Olander, and I live in Alexandria. Also Olander, and I live in Alexandria, Virginia. And we're here spending our winter.
Excellent. There were more people right in that area. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Rob Silk. I've been living in
A little bit closer.
West Palm Beach, Florida for the last 10 years. But I'm from Toronto, Canada.
Yay! Toronto, eh?
And I'm back visiting my ex-wife.
Nice.
We're gonna get back together.
There's more right around there.
Oh yeah.
I'm Bob Nolan. I'm here with my wife Mary Alice over there, and we're visiting here for a week with my brother Roy, who's at the camera right here. And I'm from London, Ontario, Canada.
There were some more people right in here, I think. If you'd raise your hands again. Here.
This is my first time at this gathering this year, but I've been here before, so this gives me a chance to stand up in front of people, because I've met a lot of people while I was here before, so I just want to let you know I'm here again. First time was 2 weeks, then it was 5 weeks, now it's 3 months. So anyway, it's a great place, and
would
nice to see everybody.
Would that name be Doug?
That name would be Doug, yes it is. Good to see you, Jim. Oh, from Toronto. Wow, hey.
They're everywhere. I see 4 of them there.
Hi, I am Marlene Kraft from Bismarck, North Dakota. We are here to visit my 2 beautiful sisters. Along with me are my 3 great, wonderful grandchildren.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here for the first time? Here, good.
My name's Frank Eckenhofer, and I'm from San Francisco.
Yay!
And I'm here to visit my friend from many, many years ago, Arthur Hochberg, and Art's going to be talking today. So I'm really wonderful to be here. This is a beautiful place. seems like a very special place.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. We now ask for donations for the food services and rent paid to LCS and to the man who put out the chairs and watched the cars outside. Also, I would like to mention that we don't know exactly how many people are going to be here. So sometimes we run a little bit short, sometimes too much of the food and coffee and stuff. So we tried to estimate it, but today we were a bit off, so I apologize for that. And we'll try to do better next week. So a couple of thoughts while the hat's been passed. Here are hymns for the people over 60, but I'm not sure there are very many here. Precious Lord, take my hand and help me up. Just a slower walk with thee. Don't tell it on the mountain, but speak up. Nobody knows the trouble I have seen. Guide me, O thou great Lord God. I've forgotten where I left my car. Count your many blessings. Count them one by one. Just a second, please. These are some of the things I've learned this was not written by me. These are some of the things that people have learned as they've gotten over 60 and later. I have learned that sometimes the people you expect to kick you when you're down will be the ones to help you get back up. I've learned that just because someone does not love you the way you want them to does not mean they don't love you with all they have. I have learned that maturity has more to do with the experiences you have had and what you have learned from them, and less to do with how many birthdays you've celebrated. I have learned that no matter how good a friend is, he or she is going to hurt you every once in a while. You must forgive him or her for that. I have learned that it isn't always enough to be forgiven by others. You have to learn to forgive yourself. I have learned that no matter how badly your heart is broken, the world doesn't stop for your grief. I have learned that background and circumstances may have influenced who you are, but we are responsible for who we become. And Gilles, are you ready to push the buttons? Today, Thank you, Daniel O'Donnell. I just want to say that Charlie Police Staff extends his thanks for the Polar Bear run. They raised over 60,000 pesos, plus the raffle earned 145,000 for a total of 205,000. Charlie thanks you, and Red Cross thanks you, and we all thank you. Today, our presenter is Art Hochberg. His topic is Life Can Be Hard or Life Can Be Beautiful. It's our choice. We can do this lightening up through passion and humor. Art has been a psychologist in the U.S. for the past 40 years. He last worked as a forensic psychologist at State Penitentiary in southern New Jersey, now lives in Ajijic. Welcome, Art.
How you doing? Excuse me. Well, I'm real happy to be here. I've been living here about 3 months, and I'm coming from a background of psychology, which is quite a background to come from, and I thought I would share a few things that I may have learned over the years relative to how we can live a life without a lot of conflict and a lot of self-doubt and a lot of despair. I've dealt with thousands of patients, so the first thing I learned was that whatever patients I had, they were actually teaching me. Because, you see, everyone's situation is so unique that you can't possibly understand what anybody else is going through, because we hardly understand what we're going through. So we have to try to piece together the parts of our life so that somehow they make sense. And at the beginning, we have these teachers. You know, we have the parents are teaching us, the grandparents are teaching us, elementary school. We go through schools and people teach us stuff. And we take what we need and we leave what we don't need. And I think we're blessed if we can be around people who let us do that. Let us take what we need and let us leave what we don't need. And if we can grow up in an environment where there's that sense of freedom, then we're real lucky. And I think in many ways, for me, although many of you folks have been here a lot longer than I have, I feel that in Ajijic we have a chance to do that because the environment seems to be set up for that. The people, for me, the people are kind and considerate and treat everybody with a certain amount of good manners, or good, education. They call it, in Spanish, they call it education. This is, you're learning to educate yourself. So, and we have this lovely environment. It's unbelievable. I mean, I come from Brooklyn, New York. We never had this in Brooklyn. So all I'm trying to say is that for each one of us here, I know for myself, we have an opportunity to grow, really grow. I mean, really go through some kind of transition and transformation. Now, most of you folks know that, because otherwise you wouldn't be here. You know, you'd be in Toronto, or Milwaukee, some other enchanted place. So, so the key, as far as I'm concerned, is to look at the patterns of our life and try to figure out what kind of a pattern we're in at present. And is that working for us? Now, evidently, you wouldn't be here if where you were was totally working for you, you know? I'm sure we all came from environments that were partially supportive, partially beautiful, or can we take it the next step? Whatever that step is. Everybody has their own parameters. Everyone has their own dimensions. Everyone has their own issues they got to work through because we all come from tremendously different environments, tremendously different parenting and levels of support. So, someone asked me what I liked about being here when I first came, and I said, well, it looks to me like this is a place where you can be who you want to be. Now, everybody wants to be someone else, you know? So some people come here and they make huge transitions. And some people make just tiny little transitions. It doesn't have to be big. Nobody even has to know about it. It's just like your little thing. Or you can make a big thing and ride around town in a cart with a white donkey and a big hat and call yourself Pedro. Who's to say you're not Pedro? So, most of us won't do that. That's pretty far out on the end there. But, so how do we know when we're getting to a part of our pattern or whatever we're doing that's not working for us? Not working for us, not working for the people around us, not working for our sense of who we are. How do we know that? You know, how do we know when it's time to get out of the rage? This is unusual. We haven't had a rage for a long time. So, you know, it's an art thing being a psychologist. It's a real trip, really, because you're in a position where people come to you and they're often quite vulnerable. And you have to try and be some support and figure out what is your best way to be. So the first thing I learned in psychology is you gotta listen. If you don't listen to people, you're not going to learn. And if you don't learn, then you can't be of any help to people.
I think we better interrupt for a minute and see what we're going to do about getting out of the rain. We can go into the sala and take us
You
just a
brought
few
that
minutes
on,
to set up.
Hochberg.
This is an extraordinary day, raining on this day.
Okay, so early in the game for me, I realized that the only way I was going to be of any help to people was to really listen and try and go where the person is going. I'm sorry, no, not go where the person is going, going where the person is. And I remember that clearly because when I started out in the field, and I actually worked in Ontario Hospital in Kingston, put me right on the wards, you know, and that's a serious hospital, state, provincial hospital, and first patient was like, what? You know, this person was in such a different state that I could imagine. I was pretty young then, of course, that it was like, so I realized if I think that I'm going to tell this guy what's what, you know, and I've been in school for 5 years, you know, forget it. So I, you know, even to this day, I have an image of that patient. It was maybe that patient, oh, it was 40 years ago. I still remember that patient because I remember that, you know, he had a big diagnosis, paranoid schizophrenic or whatever, and so I thought, so first when I meet him, of course, I go to the section in the abnormal psych book that says paranoid schizophrenia, you know, as if I'm going to know how to relate to this guy, because I read about it. So he, you know, so that kind of taught me that, you know, if I'm going to be of any value here, I just got to, like, shut my mind off. You know, shut that part of my mind off that thinks it knows what's going on here, because I don't. So I learned more about paranoid schizophrenia with that guy than I did in all the years that I studied psych. So I try to take that into each kind of situation that I went into, and so that was like the first thing I think I learned is just don't go in there blabbing, just go in there listening. Which I find is a general rule, and I try to do that as I walk around Ajijic or wherever I'm going, you know, walk into a scene. I try to just listen and see what's here, see what's something to be learned or something to be given or some laugh, you know, have fun, whatever. Or you might not have any part to play. You know, some scenes are just walk-ons. You just walk on and just go. And some scenes. You know, you get a few lines, and some scenes are totally unexpected. I mean, that's the great thing about being an Ajijic. You can meet anybody on the street anytime, and all of a sudden they're going, they open up their life like that. Really? You know, in Brooklyn, you just kind of walk with your head down and your eyes on the ground. That was Brooklyn. But so I'm walking in Chapala, and a guy from out of nowhere walks by, stops, and talks to me like he's an old friend of mine. Hi, I'm so-and-so, I'm from so. Says, I've been married 5 times. I got a Mexican wife. She's 28 years old. I'm going to buy a car. I mean, he's 70. Do I look like the roving reporter? You know, we're not going to get on CNN. You're just telling me the story. So there's like a real openness here, you know, and it's like really marvelous. So that's the thing about learning and relative to psych, right? Let's see. Okay. Okay. So you know. We all have these pasts. We have backgrounds. We have places we came from. You know, we all have a history. We all have an amazing history. If you think about your history, you think of how many scenes you played in your life. And some of us are a little older in this room. You know, except me, of course. But you know, everybody's a little older in this room. So the point is, are we going to let everything that's happened to us in our life, like, be a burden, or be a source of despair, or be a point of resentment, or be a point of, you know, I was victimized and I can't get over it. Well, you know, everybody goes through what they got to go through, and no two people go through the same thing. So evidently what we go through is exactly what we need to go through. And it's hard for us to get into our head because we think we should be having somebody else's life. You know? I should be living in Edmonton and own big oil wells and then come to Ajijic and live in the racket club. Well, some people get to do that, and there are people here who are that, but not everybody. So we got to figure out what is there for us. You know, what is the learning for us? Because we're still here. If we weren't here playing these parts, still, you know, we wouldn't have to worry. We wouldn't have to think about it. But evidently, everybody still has things to do. I mean, and so then it's up to us to figure out how many things to do, and how to do it, and where to do it, and who to do it with, etc. So we can come down here, which some people do, and that's fine. I have no problem with any of it. And come down, and they just transplant the way they were, like in Toledo or somewhere like that, and do it here, which is fine, because this is a nice place to do anything, you know? So, but other people may just want to make a little change about how they relate to people, about their sense of community, sense of spirituality, sense of relationship to their own family, sense of relationship to the Mexican people. So it's like we're working on multi dimensions at the same time. And I think, for me, this environment is so amazing because it's like ancient. You know, it feels ancient to me. And so if you look at someone who like the lady who lives over on Cologne. She's at the bottom of Cologne before you get to the lake. She sells blankets and stuff like that. And she hauls around about 300 pounds of stuff every day. A little lady, Indian, when you look at her, it's like ancient. And you can be sure, how do you think she carries that 300 pound thing? You think she's thinking, oh, I got to get home, cook dinner, and I wonder, I'll get, you know, there's nothing going on because there's no energy going up in her head. All of her energy is in her body, and that's how she could do this. So the question is how to maximize our energies, really, you know. And because of different situations we were in, where we came from, we had to give our energies in certain directions, right? If you're a mom and you got to raise your kid and do this and do whatever you did, and the dad, and you got to go downtown and go down to Toronto, make a lot of money, you know, if that's your thing, then that's your thing. But whatever took your energy, you can change here. We don't have to I'm just making a general statement. We don't have to think about the stock market. You know, we don't have to think about the government in the U.S. We can watch the news if you want, so-called news, you know. Worry about the weather in Milwaukee. You know, we could do that if you want, or you can just like be here now. You know, Ram Dass wrote a book called Be Here Now. Remember, be here now. So if we can keep telling ourselves, I'm here, it's now, I wonder what's here for me. And I think then it comes. It's almost like we open the doors. It's like we open the doors, like that prayer we had this morning. This is great. We open the doors and let it all come in, whatever has to come in. So that's how we really change and how we find out, you know, how we find out about ourselves. Because if we don't really relate to other people, I mean, we really don't find out about ourselves. Also, there has to be a balance. I believe, my experience is, there has to be a balance between relating to people, which we can do, and being alone. For a short period of time in my life, I spent living in a Buddhist monastery, Zen Buddhist monastery, and so I spent a long time in quiet, being quiet, because that's what we did. We just were quiet. And you just learn to be with yourself. Now, that's not easy, because our mind is like a motion picture production company. It's always bringing up scenes. It's like, what about this? So, how do we at least quiet the mind? I don't think we could ever shut it down completely, but we can quiet it, or just like go sit there for 10 minutes. I'll be with you in 10 minutes. You know, it's like we got to learn to like just put things off just enough. If they don't have to be done immediately, put things off just enough so that we can try to be in a space of clarity and not thought and not coming up with plans and playing out old scenes. And that's why, you know, being like on the Malecon and looking out at the lake and the mountains on the other side, I mean, it can serve as a real like tool. Even 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, just to be alone with yourself, and it really helps. It helps clear. It's a paradox. The paradox is if you can learn to be with yourself, then you can learn to be with everybody else. I mean, it's a real paradox, and so we have to learn to take time out for ourselves. And most people are so social. Here we have a real social crowd in general because people are they like to do that. But I think it's necessary to take time out, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, you know, whatever you feel comfortable with, and just be alone. Don't just be alone. Don't answer the cell phone. Don't do nothing. You know, just like be with that original energy, and when we have it around here. So I think that's a big part of the learning that I have experienced here. So one of the things I learned a lot about in psych is what people can put up with, as you, I'm sure know. And working in a state prison is a real learning experience. And I'm not going to talk a lot about that because my friend said I shouldn't talk about that because it'll make people depressed. So I won't talk a lot about it. Probably to make me depressed too, right? So, but the thing I learned is how people can adjust. I mean, can you imagine living in a cell with 3 other men in a cell that's not more than this little half thing here, of 3 other men who have committed some offenses, major offenses, and for 7 or 8 years? I mean, the thought is mind-boggling. So then you think, well, how does this person do this? How do they do that? Now, because I talked to a lot of the prisoners over the years, is that the ones who did well, I saw one thing is they had some kind of schedule, their own schedule for the day. It wasn't like a big time schedule, because you can't make a big time schedule in the prison, like I think I'll take a walk in the park later on, but you use what you got. You know, maybe I'll sit in the corner of the yard there for 10 minutes. So, but the point I'm trying to make is that the people had some kind of little schedule, because they had to work, they did work, you know, everybody had a little job, and they have a little schedule, and they would stick to the schedule, and that would give them a framework for the day. And that was their issue. Most of us in Western culture, we have our frameworks are too much. We have overdeveloped frameworks, like, and we can't get out of them. But because we constructed it so strong that you think, I might want to peek out a little bit, but it's so strong you can't even look out of it. So you think, well, I'll just spend 25 years being a miserable CPA or whatever. No offense to anybody's occupation. I don't know, it's our occupation, I shouldn't talk. So I think, so I'm looking at this guy, this prisoner is 38 years old. He's been in for 18 years on a murder rap. He's looking, he comes in. He's totally, like, clear. I mean, there's, like, no madness coming out of it. There's no anger. There's no, like, agitation. And I'm thinking, this guy's been in for 18 years. And I look at his sheet. I got all the sheets in front of me. And he has not had a single inside charge. Now, in the prison, because you're put in prison because you get a charge. And then when you're inside, you can get some more charges because you can't figure out the system, or you get in a fight or some kind of trip inside, then you get a double charge, and now you're in solitary or whatever. This guy, I'm looking at him, I'm looking at his sheet. He has not had a single inside charge in 18 years. And you can't imagine how difficult that is. Anybody here who's worked in the prison knows how difficult that is, because you could get a charge for just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's not like you try to murder a god or something. It's just like, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be over there. They write you up. So 18 years, he hasn't got a single charge. So what does that mean? That means the guy is so, well, could mean a number of things, but this guy was so focused and so alert and so non-invasive. And the truth is, this guy was in on a murder rap, but he had a certain amount of wisdom because he knew who to talk to, who not to talk to, who to look at, who not to look at, you know, when to talk to the guards, when not to talk. In other words, he instinctively figured out how to stay out of trouble. So, in many ways, that's a paradigm for me, because it's like we're doing the same thing, only we're in a different environment. But we have to, like, use our wisdom about what we're getting into. You know, like sometimes you're walking down the street, somebody's coming down the street, and you think, and you know them, and you think, and they haven't seen you. I'm sure we've had this. They haven't seen you, and you go, I wonder if I should ask them how they're doing, because they may actually tell me how they're doing, and I'll be here for a half hour. So that's just a little example. So it's like just trying to, because all we're really trying to do in many ways is to eliminate a lot of chaotic kinds of thinking and a lot of sense of, oh my God, things are out of control, you know, aren't things awful? A lot of people like this, right? Our things, they give you a list of what's wrong with Mexico. I love people like that. What's wrong with Mexico? Well, the maid, she's this, and the gardener is this, and the 4 pesos went this way. It's like, will you just knock it off? You know, it's like, where do you think you are? And then they say mañana, they mean mañana. Well, they were 10 minutes late. Really? How unusual. So we got to get out of that pattern of like, you know, you know, because did we come down and do that? You know, we came here like throw away the watches practically, or something like that. So I'm telling you about the guy in the prison because he made a really big impression on me. It's like, how did this guy do this? Well, he went into a place in his being that was just quiet and calm and didn't need to get into things that he didn't need to get into. Because when you're in the prison, you can get into things. You know, you go out in the yard, you can get into some action, and, you know, or you can just like put everything in the background. So part of it is to really learn to put things in the background when they need to be in the background and put things in the foreground when they need to be in the foreground. Because what we do sometimes is we shift things around so the things that should be in the background, we pull into the foreground. And you go, what are you worried about that for? That's now 3 years from here. That's going to be 3 years from now. What are you worried about when your IRA is going to terminate or whatever now it's going to do? 3 years. Or you can, you know, respond immediately. Someone's on the call, on the phone, you know, get over here, I'm hurt, or whatever, so you get on it. So it's a question of the ability to pull things into the front and push things to the back. It's like each one of us is a stage director. It's like our life is like a movie. I know this is like sounds like kind of trite and stoned out or whatever, but it's like it actually is like a movie. I mean, if you watch it, and we are the movie. We are the own movie of our life, and everybody who's in the movie is characters in our own movie. We're the star of our own movie. I mean, even though it seems like, well, who are you to be a star? You know, who are you to be a star? Well, now in our own way, everyone is the key player in their own movie. So, to the extent that we can, we have to give ourselves the space to play out the part that we came to play out, and that's for each one of us to figure out. Psychology, I think, has something to do with helping people to separate themselves, their own being, and what they got to do from others. See, I think a lot of psychology is presented as, how are we going to fix relationships? This is Dr. Phil. Dr. Phil is very big on that. How are we going to get two individually miserable people, put them together so they can be miserable together? Good work, Dr. Phil. That's what we want. Oh, you people haven't seen each other in 10 years. We'll make up for that. Come on, get them together and we'll get it. So, I think, I'm not saying, I'm just exaggerating, of course, but because, you know, sometimes you got to talk to people and say, you know, why don't you act this way, why don't you act this way? But in general, it doesn't have to do with that. It's not about that. It's about actually pulling out of other people's dramas that you have inserted yourself into. So where does that come from? We all, of course, anybody who's had kids, that's a good example. It's our kids, right? The kids come, they got dramas, and then we either, what kind of role that we play? And it's, of course, there's a whole range. Some people, they just get to be really nice grandparents, and they show up once in a while. Everybody loves them, everything's cool, they don't worry about things. Well, that's fine. Other people are totally enmeshed in their kids' lives. And that's not good for them, and it's not good for their kids, it's not good for anybody. And that's a hard thing to do because, you know, we're concerned about our kids. We love them, we're attached to them, we want to see them do well, you know, everything. But really, they have their own journey, they have their own path, they have their own thing to do. They're going to have their own attitudes. They might not even think the way we think. Imagine that. So, I mean, did you think the way your parents thought? Does everybody here say, yes, Mom, no, Mom, no, yes, Dad? Well, you're really right on, Dad. That's a very good idea. I think I'll do just exactly what you tell me. So why do we think our kids are going to listen to us? We don't listen to our parents. So, one of the things so it's good to practice with your kids. Good. I think it's very good to practice with your kids because, it's so easy to get into, well, why did you do that? Why did you buy this house? How come you're having another child? Why didn't you do this? How come you voted for that person? Cut the cake this way, don't cut it that way. So, I think that's a big part of the work in psych that I experienced was that, and the interesting thing about working with guys in prison is that they have no choice. So you see some very interesting things in prison, such as, one of my jobs is I had, once in a while we get a call and so-and-so's inmate's mother has died for, death notices. I had to see the inmate to tell him, Mom, actually I didn't do it. I won't take credit for that. The social worker had that job. That's not an easy job. They had to call the inmate down and say, we got a notice your mom died last night. Then they sent him to me to see if he's all right. So, 99% of the time, they were fine. Why is that? And some of these people were very attached to their moms, very attached to their grandmoms. A lot of inmates are raised by their grandmoms. Grandmom dies, it's a big deal. But they have, as a way of surviving in prison, they can't be thinking about their grandma. They can't be, they can't be having those kinds of worries because they can't do anything about it. It's going to drive them crazy. Then they'll have to come down for meds, So you don't need that. So most of them instinctively just deal with it in a very calm manner. And most of them that I dealt with chose not to go to in other words, you have to write, okay, to go to the funeral. Because they got to go with gods and stuff. So, but most of them chose not to go to the funeral because they didn't want to open that up inside of them. So that, it's an interesting thing. So, I think it has a lot to do with just disengaging ourselves from other people's dramas that we don't need to be in. And also, dramas change. Sometimes we're in a situation and we're in it. It's like, and then it starts to change. And so, and you're still in it, and the other person's going, well, you're not quite getting the picture here, And that's what makes marriages and, separations, few people here have been through divorces, I'm sure. And that's why it makes those kinds of transitions difficult. Because, if it's not happening, it's not happening. And you might go see Dr. Phil, you might put it back together again, I'm not sure you will. Or it just means that the people have just started going in different ways, and they may be all right. Each one might be all right with that. So that's another way, So that has to do with staying out of other people's stuff. That's a big issue. Anybody have anything they want to ask before I continue? Or say? No. Okay.
Any
Young lady.
questions?
So, how can we focus more on choosing happiness versus drama?
Okay, that's a good question. Not that I have an answer, but it's a good question. Next. Oh, okay. No. Okay. I'm going to answer that question. Well, I think that's where you start really looking at yourself honestly, and you just say to yourself, what's going on here? Like what's going on here? And just being honest with yourself. And you're lucky if you have someone, say it's another person, whatever. I'm using it theoretically, of course. And you're lucky if you're with another person who's also willing to say, yeah, what's going on here? Rather than fighting and you did this to me, and you remember that, and you never did this, and a whole bunch, you know, like old stuff. So if you just kind of keep the slate clear, so that, because a lot of miscommunications or misunderstandings come from things we project onto other people. In other words, you think this about me, don't you? The person goes, what? I don't think that. In other words, we think we know how other people feel about us. We think we know what other people are thinking. How can we possibly know what other people are thinking? We hardly even know what our own thoughts are. So, the first thing we do is withdraw the projections. This is psych talk. You know, you withdraw the projection. What have you projected onto a person, situation, or whatever? What have we put on it? That's our own stuff. It doesn't really exist, you know? And so the withdrawal of projections, pulling back of projections onto others or anything, you know, where we live, our religion, whatever it is that we have projected that we have to have this way, we then can dismantle that projection. And that's what transition is. That's what transformation is to withdraw the projections, and then you're sitting with your own projection. You understand? The opposite, like when projections are carried to an extreme, then that becomes paranoia. In other words, the extension of projections is paranoia. So that you say, well, it's clear that guy's out to kill me. See, but you understand? So, and we do that on different levels, but we do it. This person doesn't like me. This person's angry. This person doesn't like gringos. You know, we don't know any of that. That's one of the great things I like about saying hello to the next, you know, say buenos dias, buenos dias. It's like guys coming up the street, it looks like he wouldn't say hello to anybody in 10 years. He's just in his own thing. And you go, buenos dias, and he goes, buenos dias. And it's like, well, where was that? In other words, that was in there, but you took a risk. He might not say anything to you, but you took a risk, and then you get the benefit, which is a really nice smile, and smiles are like food, just like food. So, does that answer for a little bit?
Another question from someone?
Oh, okay. Nobody has it. That means I got to say something. Okay.
We, because of the interruption, we'll extend it to a few minutes, but a lot of people have appointments and stuff, so
Sure.
we'll try to come.
I don't want to keep anybody from their appointments. So what can I tell you about it? So, a lot of it, you know, a lot of it is really not projecting onto a scene before the scene occurs. You know, I think what we do is we go into things, we go into situations, and we already have a picture of it in our head. And very often that picture distorts our experience because we won't let go of the picture, you know, and if we just like take it for what it is, then we'll get what it is rather than our projection onto what it is. And then we can learn more. Otherwise, we're just always working with our own projections, you know, and it may be all right, but we're not taking that little risk. You see, we got to take a risk. There's no doubt about it. And you all know that because you're all here in Ajijic. Otherwise, you could be back in Omaha sitting at the Lions Club. So you know about risk, and everybody knows about what risk they have to take too. You know, like everybody knows. Well, I might just do this, and it often has to do with doing something on your own. I think I really do think that. Just do a little something on your own that nobody hardly even knows about. You know, or you don't make a big story about it, or tell everybody what you did or something. You know, just like go through it, and it's most amazing sometimes. If you go through something and it's so exquisite that there's no words for it, well, you know, the real challenge is leave it in the world of no words. Just be with it. It's amazing. And because you're itching to put it out in words, you know? It's like we're so verbal, you know, and so conceptual in Western culture. And this, I think the blessing of being in this kind of culture is that a lot of it's nonverbal. It's nonverbal. And that's real communication. When you can do nonverbal communication, or contain your energy so that you can focus. I have a friend here in town. He told me, story just sticks in my brain, is he worked in the mines. He worked in a coal mine in Leadville, Colorado, and for a period of time he worked with some Navajo Indians. Navajos went down into the mines. He said he worked with a crew of Navajos for 3 days, and in 3 days they did all the mining work. That entire crew of Navajos never said a word. But they did the work. In other words, to me that's like amazing. Wow, can you imagine getting a whole bunch of gringos together and they don't say a word for 3 minutes? Anyway, so I would like to leave you with some words of wisdom, only I can't think of any. So I'll let you continue with your, if anybody's got appointments.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Great. Just want to tell you about the speaker next week is Barbara Shermer. Her topic is about cosmic trends, and it's tuning into natural rhythms. The cosmic trends, natural rhythms in 2011 and 2012. Life consists of cycles and patterns that are hidden but knowable. Gain fresh perspective on the upcoming planetary cycles of 2011 and 12 that affect us all, both collectively and individually. Barbara Sherman is an internationally known astrologer and author who shows how the principles of in-depth astrology may be immensely useful in understanding our lives. That'll be good. She has a vigorous astrological practice with both individual and corporate clients with 2 very different specialties. As a business coach and a timing expert for entrepreneurs and management, as well as a fertility consultant for women who want to become pregnant. She is articulate, fun, and offers her perceptive, often stunning insights, and affirming down-to-earth style. She's also very knowledgeable about astronomy. So she is a person who's very scientific about astronomy and combines the astrology and the patterns and cycles of patterns. So we hope to see you next week, and we hope it doesn't rain us out. But, you know, they say showers of blessings. Thank you very much. Hope to see you next week.